Hi, I'm Dom Griffin. I'm a film critic, and you are watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, television series reviews, that sort of thing. So if you like movies, and you like movie-adjacent popular culture, and you like to see somebody pick those things apart, you're in the right place, and you should consider subscribing. Today, I am reviewing the 33rd film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, The Marvels. A few hours before I went to my screening of the film tonight, Marvel dropped a final trailer for the film that felt curiously desperate, leveraging old footage of big characters no longer in the MCU, giving away one of the film's biggest cameos, and trying its hardest to change the fact that the film has lower pre-sales than both The Flash and Black Adam. It made me think, going in, I'd be watching a new low for the franchise, the sort of embarrassing misfire that might get ceaselessly mocked throughout opening weekend. But I wasn't actively rooting against the film itself. Going back to one of my very first videos in this channel, I was not exactly a fan of the first Captain Marvel, as supported by this Letterboxd entry made halfway on the walk between the theater and my apartment, where I was already feeling many of the particulars of the film rapidly evaporating from my memory. Tonight, I saw the Marvels in the same auditorium as I did in the first film, 2 seats over from the same seat, and found myself pleasantly surprised by what I experienced. The TLDR is that I enjoyed the Marvels a lot more than Captain Marvel. While Captain Marvel to me was a muddled mess, it had something of an internal consistency to it, whereas the Marvels feels like 2 distinct films conjoined together. One, a heartwarming, charming picture that takes some light risks and succeeds on the strength of its 3 leads' considerable chemistry. The other, a barely functional actioner with a bland villain and a plot that requires more exposition and explanation than its scant 105-minute runtime can sufficiently contain. I'm gonna try to keep things spoiler free because I know that triggers people and people sort of hate that with these types of films. And also because the plot's like nothing to write home about. Like, I suppose you could pen like a short message on the back of a postcard, maybe, but even then the person would read it in like 3 seconds and just throw it away. Suffice to say, the movie joins together Carol Danvers from the first film, Kamala Khan from the Miss Marvel series, and Monica Rambeau, seen as a child in the first film and a grown adult in WandaVision. Due to MacGuffin-related chicanery, the 3 heroes are entangled in such a way that the use of their powers causes them to switch places, leading to some inventive fight scenes and a fair amount of both humor and tension. Initially, I didn't like this premise for a couple of reasons. Asking audience members to have seen 3 separate Disney Plus shows in addition to the earlier films seemed like an unwise choice. But for the first 10 minutes, The Marvels goes out of its way to make sure viewers understand the central figures and their relationships to one another, even if it feels like they have to focus more on retreading the forgettable first film than on the comparatively recent TV shows. I also felt going into this like the most compelling thing about Carol Danvers as a character is that at the end of the first film, she essentially abandons her best friend's daughter. And then that character grows up and time has passed, and now we're going into this movie expecting to explore that relationship and see what things are like with them as adults. Like, how do they bridge that gap? In pro wrestling, modern promotions sometimes use what are called triple threat matches. They're like 3-way fights between 3 different opponents all fighting at the same time. Personally, I am not like a big fan of the triple threat match. Some people love it. Some people think it's exciting and cool and different, whatever. I don't like it because I feel like it detracts from like the sort of, I don't know, narrative purity of a one-on-one fight where you can focus specifically on like one rivalry or one relationship or something. Like, to me, it's simpler, it's cleaner with just kind of one-on-one. To me, bringing Miss Marvel into this film seemed like an odd fit, but Imani Vellani proves invaluable to the proceedings. Her lovable fangirl makes for a perfect stand-in for the unspoken child version of Monica, who adored Carol to the ends of the earth, and her boundless enthusiasm plays well off of Monica's relatively reserved nature. Her and Teyonah Parris really make the movie for me, and I cannot imagine liking it half as much if they weren't the focus. All the film's most thrilling and entertainment bits come from milking the place-switching sequences, and the quieter moments with just the 3 leads. The movie really works best as a hangout picture that has brief bursts of heavier melodrama, and Kamala's family from the Miss Marvel show add a lot of heart too. But everything else? Woof. I'm just gonna kind of go in like bullet points here. The villain sucks. Zawe Ashton's Darben is the villain, and she's just extraordinarily boring and like lame and just uninteresting. Definitely like bottom tier Marvel villain. I don't know if she's quite as bad as like Chris Eccleston in The Dark World, but like pretty close. It's not so much that Ashton's a bad actress or something like that. It's just that the character is just like a nothing. It's just like just barely there.
What do you mean the people were just kind of nothing?
They're just like not important, like they don't matter.
Like, when she's introduced, it sort of feels as though we're expected to know who the hell she is, and like we don't care, or I don't care. quite frankly. The complexities of the Kree-Skrull conflict still feel kind of underbaked and are confusing with relation to the first film status quo, and then the changes made to it for Secret Invasion. It just feels like such strange background noise to the story. In James Gunn's Guardians films, like those movies exploring the space side of the MCU, it really felt like there was like this functional ecosystem where like all the different communities and worlds were sort of thought of, and like they existed in the same place in time, kind of. The Captain Marvel movies, I feel like, just don't really have that. I admire that in this film, I feel like director Nia DaCosta has made an effort to try to differentiate the different planets, because like in Captain Marvel, they just looked like interchangeable messes. And like here, you can tell that she put more thought into like each environment being its own thing. It doesn't feel like the whole Nick Fury and Saber and the space station, all the space side of Marvel, it doesn't even feel like it exists in the same world as the Guardian stuff. And it feels like there's just been a lot of like development off screen with this part of the world that we just don't get clued in on. And this felt like the movie where that would happen. So much of it takes place in space. And it's sort of like they just don't want to get to that stuff. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's like they're holding out if there's some other project they haven't developed yet, so they don't want to draw in too much of the lines. They want to leave some leeway or something. But I just don't get it. And also, the socio-political metaphors underpinning the Kree-Skrull War and the sort of like weird way it's depicted just feel even like worse given like current events. Like I don't understand like what's going on there, and I just sort of wish that they just use something else to be the main thrust of the plot. Also, the film has to do so much to make like everything makes sense. And by that, I mean like all of the powers are like kind of different, and they have multiple scenes explaining how the powers interact. Then they have to explain how the rules work for the place switching stuff. And then they kind of have to explain who the villain is and like what her motivations are and like what's going on. And it just ends up feeling that like every couple of moments there's just like new exposition. And like, look, Teyonah Parris is a fantastic actress. God bless her. She does a fantastic job for the most part, making that stuff feel natural and feel real and feel like it's part of a real movie. But the main plot actually doesn't feel so much like a story as much as it's just like a bunch of stuff needing to be explained to you. The short runtime kind of reminded me of Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage, where that movie is like an hour and a half long-ish, and it's not short because it's like so tightly composed. It's short because in the testing process, there was a bunch of shit that didn't work and people didn't like, so they just chopped it all out. So when you're watching the movie, it just feels like there's whole chunks missing. It's got like a real Swiss cheese vibe. This movie is an hour and 45 minutes. It's really like an hour and 35 before credits. And it really does feel like a lot of stuff just got cut out. Like somewhere out there is a longer, perhaps more coherent cut of the movie, but that cut might have tested poorly and maybe they were anxious about it or something. I don't know. So this final version like moves better, I guess. And it's like more, there's not a lot of fluff, but also it just means that half of the movie just feels like completely underbaked. I can't really call this bad, but there are a pair of sequences in this film that are quite strange and a little out of left field, I suppose. And they're not, like, they didn't work for me, but I feel like it's necessary to call it their inclusion. Because they feel like really big swings that I kind of admired. Because so few of these movies ever take any kind of risks or do anything, like, weird. And these felt like weird. I'm not going to like expand on the sequences, but once you see the film, if you choose to see the film, you will know exactly which two sequences I mean. Because the first one I was like, how is this in this movie? How did they cut other stuff from the test screenings? But like this is just, this whole little aside is here. And the other one, I was like, this is like, I don't know, like Flubber-esque. Like it feels like this is like a real broad, weird, goofy comedy thing. But like, I kind of dig it. Like I kind of admire that they went there, I guess is the best way I can describe it. I know it sounds weird, but the whole movie functions very much like a comedy. It's very like, the comedy didn't really make me laugh like ever, but there was a lot of me going like, oh, that's cute. And like, oh, I like that. That's nice. That's sweet. Which is, your mileage may vary. But look, it all kind of boils down to one major issue for me. The first film's core flaw is the decision to make Carol's origin a period piece set decades earlier than the main thrust of the MCU's timeline, and to make her character spend the vast majority of it suffering from amnesia and an ongoing mystery about who she really is, for her literal introduction into this fucking world. Now, 20 years have passed, and we've seen her for a sum total of like, 5 minutes in the ensuing films, and we barely get into any of what she's been up to this entire time. She still feels like a blank slate, and not the real protagonist of her own franchise. Larson does great when it comes to playing off of Parris, Vellani, and Jackson, but she just never feels like a fully realized character on her own. If it weren't for Simu Liu's charisma vortex as Shang-Chi, Carol Danvers would feel like the most vaporware hero in the entire cinematic universe. We spent the whole first movie waiting to fully meet her, and we spend this one wondering when we're really gonna find out what the fuck she's been up to, outside of the film's one narratively convenient revelation. That said, this isn't exactly the sky is falling new low that the prognosticators have sort of suggested it might be. I don't know if I would even put this in like my 10 least favorite Marvel movies, to be quite honest. But it feels like Nia DaCosta, who brings some real heart and verve to this film, is going to be paying the price of all the other recent Marvel letdowns. Nothing about this film's marketing was significantly worse than any other MCU release. It's just coming out in a year where Quantumania was the height of mediocrity, and the sheer glut of Disney Plus shows has hurt Marvel's brand. This movie is likely to underperform financially, and it won't even be on its own merits, which I suppose is the flip side of how many of these movies were runaway successes completely independent of their relative quality. It's kind of a shame too, because the movie's sole mid-credit sequence, there's only one mid-credit sequence, there's not one at the very end. If you have to pee, just leave. I had to pee, I was very mad that there wasn't anything at the end. I should have just left. That one mid-credit sequence, which has probably already been leaked to people and like the who's in it and what happens, feels designed to try to pop people again and kind of be like, hey, more fun, crazy stuff is on the way. Don't leave us, please. It just feels like the rest of this phase is not going to rise above the level of a Boss Logic fan art poster. Like that's literally, it just feels like the rest of this franchise, until they figure out how to soft reboot the whole thing, is just going to be jangling multiversal keys at people and hoping for the best. And that's a bummer. But I thought The Marvels was pretty sweet. I thought half of it was quite sweet, and I kind of liked it. I feel like it was of the quality for the most part of like Blue Beetle, where I was like, this is sweet and I kind of like it. I dig what they're going for here. But then the other half, it was just dog shit. Just completely fucking pointless to me. Half dog shit, but sweet. So those are my feelings about The Marvels. I'll probably talk more in depth and maybe more into spoilers on my podcast this week. If you're not aware, I have a podcast, Your Fave Film Critic, that comes out every Friday at noon, where I talk about what I watch, what's going on in the news, questions from you guys. So I'll probably go a little bit longer about the movie there and maybe ramble a little bit. If you're more into my rambling content, you can check that out in a couple of days. But yeah, I guess it's maybe worth seeing, but I mean, it also feels like it's really something you could wait for Disney Plus for, whenever that's going to happen in a month or two. But if you were interested before there was all this weird backlash, and then all of the like negative buzz was harshing your interest, I think you should give the movie a chance. Because like if it's something you were already going to maybe want to like, and then now you think that it sucks, I don't think a lot of that stuff was very fair. I'll say that as much. But no, it's probably gonna flop hard. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, you should subscribe. You should hit the little bell icon thingy. You'll get notifications whenever I put out new videos. And if you have any thoughts or questions or comments, that's what the comment section's for. I love talking to you guys and answering stuff. If you have any questions you'd like me to go longer about on the pod, you can put those there as well. Thank you guys for watching. Hope everyone's doing well, staying safe, and being good to yourselves and each other. I will see you all in the next one.